It's wonderful to have you all online today, and we're going to be talking about powerful strategies that you can use in your classroom to raise that cognitive engagement level. And my name is Dr. Yvonne Johnson, and I work in the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning. I also teach research courses for different colleges at the university, and I support various types of modalities of teaching and learning, and I'm thrilled to be online with you today. To build that community, we always start with some sort of sharing of information and information about each other to let people know who's online and who they're going to be interacting with. And you can feel free to raise your hand and turn on your microphone and share who you are and your department. You can share it in the chat as well. So who wants to get started, please? Okay, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, hi, I'm Mary Costello. I am in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction in the College of Ed. I'm an instructor and also a clinical supervisor of student teachers. I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Okay, go ahead, Brandon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brandon Perez. I'm an assistant professor in special education in the College of Ed. I teach a combination of undergraduate and mostly master's courses, and I teach a lot of my master's courses online. So I'm always looking for ways to engage students specifically in online courses.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. And looking at the registration list for today, we have people from a variety of different disciplines, departments, and colleges across campus. And that provides a rich foundation for constructing knowledge, sharing experience, and learning with and from each other. So thank you all for joining us today. We'll be talking about cognitive engagement. We'll use Bloom's taxonomy as a framework for the discussion. We'll talk about techniques that you can use, and then you'll have a variety of different tools and that you can use and select from when you're designing and teaching your courses. When we're talking about cognitive engagement and thinking about what that looks like in the classroom and what are students doing, they are applying effort. They're applying psychological effort, trying to learn and master content. They are actively engaged in these learning activities. And research shows that when students are cognitively engaged in the learning process, they learn the content and skills at a deeper level, and they retain the information longer than if they simply memorized content for a test and then they might forget it shortly after the test. During the workshop, we're going to talk about some techniques that you can use to boost cognitive engagement in your courses. And when you're thinking about how to get that psychological effort and building the conditions where students are persevering and learning from their experience. And as instructors and designers of that teaching and learning experience, we want to be thoughtful and deliberate about that and providing opportunities for students to share experiences with each other and collaborate. And when you work at this dynamic in the classroom and think about how you're going to build it, you can see and feel the energy increasing. And it's a lively environment, and people, it might be louder than an environment in a classroom where students are not engaged. And the engagement might look different online. There's a lot more activity. And when you're thinking about creating the framework for engagement, a beginning step is just thinking about how is that classroom arranged, whether it's a physical classroom. We have some diagrams on here. The way that the chairs are situated, they're positioned in a way that fosters or could limit discussion and collaboration. And it's the same thing online when you're creating different types of opportunities for working together. There are approaches that encourage and foster that collaboration and active engagement, and some that limit it. So think about that when you're designing and teaching. And when Brandon brought up online teaching, and this is not specifically a workshop focused on online teaching, but there are techniques you can use in the physical classroom and the online classroom, and different approaches. Something to think about is even before you start, even before the semester starts, you are likely engaging with the students, sharing emails, setting the tone of the course, sharing a syllabus, things like that. And from that first engagement, you're setting the tone for those interactions, for that dynamic in the classroom. And so you think about, is it a welcoming tone? Is it supportive? Things like that. Because that's students' first impression. And then from there, the classroom community builds. Some of the different principles to keep in mind when you're building an engaging classroom: connecting what's happening in the classroom to the real world that students are experiencing. Could be in the university community, beyond the university community, in where they see themselves in their professional community. Having those connections, and if the students can select how things they're doing in the class connect with something that is meaningful to them in the real world, then they're going to be much more engaged. And they can adapt those assignments and activities to things that are of interest to them. Then they're going to be more committed to the cognitive process. They're going to put more effort into it. And when you're trying to build engagement, if you encourage them to present information and share their work regularly, then it becomes the norm in the classroom and they're more comfortable with it. And I start from day one of my class sessions, having them share something low stakes just to get them comfortable speaking in the class. And when the students see that everyone is sharing and, they become more comfortable, and as the semester goes on, they're more open and more detailed about their engagements. And if you can offer choice, that is really helpful in terms of providing them options that allow them to demonstrate their competence and knowledge, but maybe in different ways. You might allow them to, and we'll talk about different examples as we go through the Bloom's taxonomy and different approaches. Using mixed media, if you are sharing information, you can share it in a variety of ways. You can see that I use colorful slides just things like this, colorful slides, enough white space to allow for it not to be too busy, things like that help the students, kind of piques their interest, keeps them engaged. Maybe you have some short videos, maybe you have some vlogs, some online sites that they need to go to. So using variety of different types of media helps and get them moving. And I always start the class with either physically they're, moving, or online, maybe they're sharing something quick with a partner or something, because you don't want them to be just static, because that's when engagement can wane. And scaffolding checkpoints to see how their learning is progressing. We have several people from College of Education, and so we know about teaching different levels of cognitive complexity and scaffolding them from the foundational level to the more advanced creation level. It's important to allow time to think. And this can be a hard one for people if you ask a question and then intentionally force yourself to pause and maybe count to 60 seconds or something to allow people time to process, and then they can share information. Because if some people will answer right off the top of their head and shout out an answer, but other people prefer time to reflect. And so as the instructor, if you are deliberately providing time for the students to process, then you will get more engagement. You'll allow time for those people who are reflecting to also share information. And if you can have hooks that pique their interest, there's research that shows that when there's some sort of a cognitive connection with emotion or something that's exciting, then students' interest is piqued, and then they are more interested in what's coming. And there are different ways to gamify learning. And we'll be talking about a number of different approaches that you might use. And what I would recommend is I will send this PowerPoint to you so you'll have the links. Then just select something. You don't have to select a whole many things, but select something that you think is manageable and that would work for your classroom and try it. But I definitely wouldn't recommend just revamping everything right from the beginning, because that can create challenges because you don't know which change you made to the course that's having the impact and things like that. So I would say select a technique, try it out, refine it, and then expand as you become more comfortable. And Bloom's taxonomy, the way we're going to use this today is the foundational level is the remember level. There's always information in every discipline that students need to be able to memorize, repeat, that they need to know as a foundation upon which they'll build more complex knowledge of topics. So the remember is the foundational, and then each level, understand, apply, analyze through create, becomes more complex, and the activities and knowledge are there's different ways to engage with students and get them to be able to move up to more complicated and deeper levels of learning. And we'll talk about those different options today. But when you look at the taxonomy, think about your course, the course level. Is it a 100 level? Is it a 300 level? Is it a 600 level? So where are you starting? Are the students starting where they don't know anything about the topic, the discipline? So they need to really start with remembering. You need to get them to memorize these various different types of terms and things. Or are they coming in with several years of knowledge on the topic, and maybe you're starting at an analyzed level? So think about that and how this fits into your course and the level of knowledge of the students. So just a simple matrix that shows, so remembering, you're recognizing, recalling. You think you can use this chart to determine, okay, so they're at the foundational level, remembering. So they need to be able to recognize, recall information. Okay, let's say they're in the middle, apply. Then they need to be able to possibly implement something. So they've learned these terms, they've learned this information about the topic. They know how to classify it and exemplify it in understanding. So now they're going to execute a certain action or implement some sort of a technique. So I would say that you use these different charts, decide what makes sense for the activities that you are having them do in the class, and for the level of cognitive process that they're expected to do. And then you can select the different techniques. And we're going to show a variety of techniques today. And think about also the different types of interaction. How are you going to have the students interact with you as the instructor, with the content, with each other, with the technology? And these types of decisions are parts of the teaching and designing of a course process that when you really think about you're going to teach a certain topic, how do you want to interact with the students? How do you want them to interact with the content? Do you want them to read it independently? Do you want them to be engaged with other people when they're learning the content? Things like that. So those are important considerations to keep in mind when you're developing your different activities for cognitive engagement. Now let's look at the different levels of thinking and the cognitive processes involved. And we won't get in depth on all of these, but we do want to kind of review them, and then we'll look at some techniques. For the remember level, that's that foundational level, they can, they're recognizing and recalling information. So that's foundational. Understand, they're moving up. There's different cognitive processes involved. So the way I use these slides, I have charts, and I'll say, okay, you know what, they're really at the understand level now. So do I want them to interpret the information? Do I want them to infer and use different types of evidence and reasoning to make a conclusion? Do they need to be able to explain causes and effects and things like that? So just for a consideration, for those of you that teach, take a moment and think about, for the understand level of thinking, these 7 different cognitive processes. Select one of those, and if you would share how one of these might be appropriate for something that you teach. Maybe you have student teachers interpret something or infer something, or so let's just take a few seconds and I'll count to 60, just like I asked you all to do. And then if someone would please share, that would be great. Okay, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, thank you. so many different ways, right? Whether we're teaching or supervising student teachers. I was thinking inferring when students are working on their what's called the Ed TPA, to where they're creating lessons and teaching, recording themselves, and then analyzing their instruction and analyzing their the evaluation tools that they're using. They're certainly drawing inferences when they look at the evidence of their students and how they performed on whatever assignment or writing assignment that they're using in their lesson. They have to draw inferences based on the evidence of the student's work. Did they understand the concept or not? And then come up, think about reasons why, as well as how they would teach that differently.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mary. And that's an interesting dynamic because the students are in your programming learning, and then they're learning how to be teachers. And so that's really interesting. Thank you. Okay, does anyone else want to share an example before we go on to the next level? And the next level is taking that information and applying it. And the cognitive processes involved there are executing and implementing. They've learned the foundational information, they are understanding it, and now they're taking it and applying it to something. And one of the things we talked about in the beginning of the session was the connection between the course activities, the content, and real authentic type of experiences. And applying, that's a great opportunity to provide the students a way to have an authentic experience. Maybe they conduct some sort of demonstration type of teaching seminar where they show, okay, they've learned these different techniques. Now they're going to show how they're applying this, how they're modeling it based upon the principles that they learned. Or maybe they're grappling with problems. Problems are an excellent way to provide students the opportunity to work through those authentic challenges that they might have as a practitioner in the field, as a teacher, as a scientist, as a person in the visual and performing arts. All of these different areas have problems and challenges, and students will need to be able to navigate through those. So you give them the opportunity to implement and apply their thinking to these particular problems. And we do have an inquiry-based workshop coming up in April, and we'll be talking about different ways that instructors can incorporate that problem-based, project-based, inquiry-based activities in their classrooms. And they can also be used in community-based partnerships, which we also have an initiative with that at NIU. And then moving on to the analyze level. So they've applied it, they're going to analyze, they're going to look at evidence from different sources, Maybe they need to examine interaction sequences of situations that are occurring and how does this impact or connect with the information that they learned from the activities in the course, the content, the discussions. Maybe looking at attributions, having them analyze, review journal articles, and there are different ways that you can use tools to have students collaborate when they are analyzing journal articles. And you can use social annotation, and that's a great way to help students to see their thinking and how they analyzed a certain text or situation, maybe it's a case, and then compare it to how other students did, how they conducted the analysis and why. Were there assumptions underlying that impacted the student's analysis? And why did certain students have certain assumptions? Maybe they have different expertise, different experiences that influenced the way that they analyze these cases or journal articles, as an example. And then evaluate. They might need to examine inconsistencies. They say, okay, you know, there's a legal case or there's a situation in the classroom, and or maybe it's meteorological event. You know, we're in springtime here, and last week we had snow one day and we had 70 degrees, and then we had wind and, you know, the whole thing. So analyzing what's happening there. Were there any inconsistencies? What caused the situation? Critiquing is another way to have students utilize that evaluative level of thinking. And so they would have certain criteria for critiquing, and then they would need to critique these different, maybe electric or hybrid vehicles, as an example, and then be able to present their findings and be able to show the evidence. Okay, they evaluated this particular vehicle, and these were the strengths, the benefits, the economy, the environmental benefits compared to these other two. And so then they need to be able to explain that and provide the evidence, and all of these things prepare them for success, not only in your class or in their program of choice, but in their career and their life. And when you can help students to see those connections between what they're doing in your course, how it's going to help them in their career and in their life, then their cognitive engagement is higher, and they persist longer. And you'll see that they are coming up with more creative ways of analyzing situations, not just a superficial type of analysis. They really dig deeper and provide evidence. And so we're really helping them to develop skills that they need for success in their career and in life. And then the highest level of cognition, they're creating something. They're taking all of these different levels of knowledge that they've learned, all of this information, and they're creating something new. And students really get excited about that because they can come up with something that they're excited about. And when they share this information, it's really fun to see when they're sharing this with their peers in the class. Maybe they're sharing it with potential clients. Some of our departments have activities where the students work with a community partner or a business partner, and Those partners provide insights to the students and also provide input and evaluative suggestions. So the students really see that these opportunities to create new information, new projects. They see the authenticity and they get really excited about it, and they'll remember these activities throughout their whole life. They'll think back, wow, in that spring of 2025, we did this project and it was really fun. It was really hard, but they're energized about it. Okay, so this chart shows, we have lots of access to technology, and and that can be a way to build cognitive engagement with students. And one of the things to keep in mind about technology is you want to make sure that you're selecting the technology and this activity because it supports the teaching and learning processes. You don't want to just select the latest tool that was just released yesterday just because it was the latest tool released yesterday. You want to think about, okay, what is the goal? What level of cognition, knowledge, understanding do they need to have out of this activity? So if I've decided that applying is the level of cognition that we need them to be at, then I can say, okay, well, maybe I can have them calculate some different metrics that will show what's the likelihood of a hurricane coming based on these different data points, or creating a chart, okay, based upon these different data points. How likely is X person going to be successful in the next maybe marathon or something? How likely are they to finish based upon their previous run times and things like that? If I decide that evaluation is the level that they need to be at, then maybe I do a peer review type of thing where they provide feedback to each other. Or they post things using social annotation or different options. So we want to make sure we know what is the learning objective here that you're trying to get them to achieve, to demonstrate their proficiency, and then look at the level of complexity that they need to be able to demonstrate. And then maybe for the analyzing, maybe a mind map is something that they could create it's a little different than writing a post on one of the discussion boards or writing a paper, or maybe they do a blog that shows their analysis. So these are just ideas that you can consider. And one thing that NIU has, just a show of hands, how many people have tried the Adobe Creative Suite that NIU has for all of the for the faculty and staff and students? Okay, so we have several people who have used the Adobe Creative Suite. Does anybody want to share just briefly how you use the Adobe Creative Suite? And you can type it in the chat if you would like. While people are thinking about that, let's look at the Adobe Creative Suite. It's a really powerful tool that NIU has available, and you can log into it with your NIU credentials. So you'd use your ARZ ID and your password, and then you have access to a wide range of tools. And the graphic that I have on the screen is one that I got from the Adobe Illustrator tool that's in this Adobe Creative Suite. And this person is an educator, and they had gone in and they looked at the different tools available in Adobe Creative Suite and created this chart that shows for the knowledge level 1, remembering some of the different starter posts are, can you list XYZ? Which of these is true or false? These are just starter questions to show you that those types of starter questions are going to relate to the knowledge, the foundational level remembering aspect of Bloom's taxonomy. And then it has different options for products. So maybe they do fill in the blanks, maybe they do study cards. Quizlet is something that a lot of people have used for study cards. Maybe there's discussions. So the prompts at the top relate to, what are you going to ask the students? What are you going to have them do that is aligned with each level of Bloom's taxonomy? And then at the bottom, the products, there are these different work products, activity products, projects. Okay, wait, somebody's here, okay? That students can create to demonstrate that level of understanding or level of proficiency. If we go to comprehension, they're trying to construct meaning. So knowledge, they were retrieving knowledge. Comprehension, constructing meaning, okay? What are the ideas? What are the facts? Can you find an example of? And so then there's verbs. So what I would recommend is that you look at this and say, okay, maybe I could go into that Adobe Creative Suite and see if there's some way that I could use it. And what was really fascinating to me was that, there are all these educators in this suite of products, and they're sharing information. So I was able to get this graphic from that suite, and it's Creative Commons license to be able to use. So I didn't have to go and create this. And so that's wonderful. It's wonderful that educators and people will share this information, and then you can use it in your class and say, okay, you know what? I think that analysis approach here, and maybe I'm going to use sentence diagramming or a survey or a crossword puzzle as a way for students to be able to demonstrate that they can effectively analyze. But the point is, it's available. You don't have to create everything from scratch. And we have a number of workshops on the Adobe Creative Suite. So if you're interested in that, you can look at our programs and see how those tools might be useful to you. But it's definitely a way to up that level of cognitive engagement and excitement. And you can provide options for students. And so then if they feel like they would rather maybe gamify something to show that it is to show their level of analysis or synthesis or creating, or maybe they want to do a blog, or maybe they want to write some sort of a narrative. But there are different ways that they can demonstrate their proficiency. And so this is just another set of tools that you might use. And then Adobe Express sketchnoting. There's a 30-minute self-paced course on there that you might use, and we also have a workshop on that. And that can be a fun way to engage with students. I know when we have workshops and students write on, or participants write on the whiteboard, or when I have students do that in my classes, whether they're face-to-face and they're writing on the boards, or if it's online and they're writing on the whiteboards and things, they get excited about it. It's fun. There's a novelty. You also give them some focus points. You want to always make sure that whenever you are selecting a tool, an activity, that you have those focus points. You know, what is the learning objective of this? What do they need to be able to demonstrate proficiency on it? And those are your guideposts for the prompts that you're going to give them and the different tools and activities that you're going to select. They always want to be aligned back to those objectives for the teaching and learning processes. And when students can see that alignment, and I explicitly say, okay, you know what, we're going to use the sketch note, and it is going to help you with these different content points that we've been discussing, and you're going to demonstrate that you can use these principles and apply them to this project. And so they see it and they understand it, and they don't spend bandwidth trying to figure out, why are we doing this? I don't understand the point of this activity. So I find it best to just explicitly tell them how the connections, how this tool and activity relates to what we're learning in the class, and how they can use it throughout the program at NIU and in their profession after they graduate. There's also a TED Talk type of tool. This screen capture shows you that someone who's an educator and used the Adobe Creative Suite created this activity, and they provided the activity. They shared it in Adobe Creative Suite so that other people could use it. You could take this and you could adapt it and use it in your class. So it's wonderful. You don't have to start from scratch. It gives you some ideas. There's an editable template. So we are living in a really exciting time when we can really engage students and get them excited and reach those higher levels of cognition without starting from scratch. We can build upon what other expert educators have learned, what they've created. And then when we create something, we share it with them, and the learning and knowledge construction just keeps blossoming. So it's exciting times. And then artificial intelligence, we hear about that every day, all day long. And NIU has a number of initiatives that are looking at how to effectively integrate artificial intelligence. How do we manage this in the context of higher education? And this screen has different examples for the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And there are a number of events that NIU hosts that a lot of them are online. Some of them are in person, where you can learn about artificial intelligence from experts. We have researchers at NIU who are studying this, and how you can use it yourself and integrate it with your class to help students to understand how to use it, when to use it, when not to use it, things like that. So we're fortunate to have lots of resources. And then thinking about the the learning space, the technology space. Think about when it makes sense. Does it make sense to use a particular tool of technology? Are the students going to be able to use it? Is it going to be too much? Maybe the cost is prohibitive. The thing with Adobe Creative Suite is that it's available to all of us as NIU community members. So that takes away the barrier that could be a cost factor. You want to think about what kind of support is available, and are the students going to be prepared to use it? Are you as an instructor going to be prepared to use it? And when you make those decisions and think about the support that's available, and we do have lots of support, then you'll know if a particular tool that you're considering makes sense for the different courses that you're teaching. And some simple interaction techniques, establishing presence, and we talk about that with even being present before the class starts, or when you're working with online, you can do mini lectures or mini videos to start the week. You might share something. People are in, get excited about their pets or their hobbies or whatever. There's different things that you can do to humanize and create a presence for yourself and the students online. One of the things I do is I have students share something good that happened to them in the prior week. And I'll ask about something that they learned in class, some topic that we're talking about, and say, well, okay, we talked about the cognitive level of creation. So where did you see this in your life this past week? And so then they think about, oh, okay, I saw it in at home, I saw it at school or whatever. So tying the different activities for interaction to the learning objectives, teaching objectives for the course, and to the students' personal life brings it all together. So they see, okay, I see these connections between what we're learning in class and what is happening outside. And they become more aware of what's happening in the world, and they're processing it through a different lens. So does anyone want to share different types of interaction techniques that they use in their classes to build that engagement and the connections between people in the course? Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I like this idea of introducing a partner. And one thing that I've seen just this week and that I saw in a classroom was I think it was fifth grade students were partnered up to share their responses to an article they were reading about the Continental Congress. I think that's what it was. And their insights on it. And so the classroom teacher had them, after they interviewed each other on their responses, not share their own responses, but share their partner's responses. So getting them more engaged in listening to each other, as opposed to just thinking about their own thoughts and what they want to say. They had the opportunity to share it with the partner, but then also listening to each other. It amped up that level of engagement, active listening engagement.
Yes, that's a great example, Mary. And it definitely amps up the level of engagement and the, like you said, active listening. And something that I do along with that activity is I will have a simple template of the main things that they need to focus on, whatever those 4 things are, 5 things, whatever. so that when they're talking to their partner, so they're jotting down information from their partner, active listening, taking the notes, and then they share, like you said, they share their partner's information, and it takes them off of autopilot where, we've done introductions for years. Even young children have been doing introductions or sharing information in classes often. But if they have to share it from someone else's perspective, then they're more attentive. They're hearing a different perspective, and they're constructing new knowledge and actively listening. And so it really does increase that engagement. And it's a powerful activity, and it doesn't take a lot of your effort on the terms of creating something to make this happen in the class. I do recommend that you have some sort of a simple template as a guide, because then you won't have a bunch of questions about, okay, what were those 4 things we were supposed to, or what am I supposed to, say about this part? So I'll have a simple template. I'll project it on the screen, and depending upon the situation, maybe the students have an iPad that they can use, or maybe they're using paper. But yes, it's a powerful activity, and doesn't take a lot of effort to really have the payoff for that. Okay, thank you, Mary. That's great. And like I said, all of the activities, everything that you do in the course, even if it might seem like a very simple, might not seem like it's related to the learning objectives, but everything I do in a course is thought out in terms of how is this supporting their learning? How is this supporting the objectives that they're supposed to be meeting? And you can do that muddiest point feedback for at the end of class. Is there still something that that they have questions about? It's a simple activity, and you can see if there's trends and confusion on the parts of different students. And then breaks are important, so you will have this slide for you, but keep in mind that chunking information and giving them breaks and time for thinking is important in supporting their learning. And because if they're overloaded, then they can't cognitively engage. There's some other examples that you might use for activities. There's another example of Foursquare feedback, and you could simply put that on the screen or in the electronic course or in paper. And then rubrics, sometimes people say it's hard to evaluate some of these different activities, but we're fortunate that the American Association of Colleges and Universities created a number of rubrics that are focused on critical thinking, a number of different competencies, and they're Creative Commons, so you can use them, you can adapt them. You don't have to start from scratch. So I just think we are so fortunate to have all of these resources available. There's creative thinking, there's a rubric. They have a description, and then they have the rubric, and then you can adapt those. And if you look at it, taking risks, solving problems, embracing contradictions, it's incredible. Okay, and I will send you all of these. I'll send you the slides and the tools. Any last reflections about how you might use some of the techniques or tools that we talked about today in your class, or how you think it might support your students' engagement? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Okay, so what I would recommend is that you take the slides and then look at the different levels of thinking and the different techniques and tools, and just pick one and think about if it might seem to fit for your course, and then try it. And our department is always available to help you, so you don't have to struggle with those things. We're here to support you. And so just to wrap up, we talked about the cognitive engagement and the power of that, and the structure of Bloom's taxonomy and the different techniques, and a thoughtful way that you would decide which level of the cognition that you're working at, the type of engagement, and the different techniques. And there's information about how to contact our team, and we are happy to support you. So I thank each of you for your attention and for your engagement, and wish that everyone has a wonderful rest of the semester. And go Huskies.
Thank you so much. Have a great